Hello everyone, this is Satoshi Matrix bringing you my first ever video game review. This time, the game is Famicom Wars for the Japanese Nintendo Famicom. Famicom Wars is the first game in the long-running Nintendo Wars series, first seen outside of Japan in 2001 with the release of Advance Wars for the Game Boy Advance. Developed by Intelligent Systems, the creators of such critically acclaimed games such as Tetris Attack, Super Metroid, and the Fire Emblem series, Famicom Wars made its big impact in Japan in the late 1980s and is largely regarded as one of the best strategy games for the 8-bit console. Much like the Fire Emblem series, it's rather strange that the Nintendo Wars series wasn't localized until the days of the GBA. However, while that remains a mystery, this game should not. Even if you don't understand a word of Japanese, if you have a Famicom or a Famicom to NES converter, this wonderful title is well worth the import efforts. Anyone who has ever played any game in the Wars series will likely describe them as chess on a minefield. Every action or inaction you perform can ultimately determine if the battle outcome will be glorious victory or crushing defeat. Careful decisions about where to place units offensively and defensively ultimately determines the victor of every battle, so it's important to learn the strengths and weaknesses of every unit as you wage war. Please note that for the sake of this review, I'll be using an English translation for the menus. Normally, everything will appear in Japanese with plenty of kanji characters. Premise: Famicom Wars is a turn-based strategy game. One by one, you move around a variety of units resembling chess pieces on a map grid. When you move a unit against an enemy unit, you can choose to attack it. The initial attacker deals a good amount of damage to the enemy unit, while survivors launch a small counterattack. Counterattacks are never as powerful as initial attacks, so it's important to always strike first. Your goal of each map is to either eliminate all opposing forces or to capture the enemy HQ, located in the heart of their territory. The game is over when one of these two goals has been reached by either army. Story: you assume the role of commanding officer of the Red Star Army, known as Orange Star outside of Japan to avoid reference to the Russian military. Your task is to defeat the opposing Blue Moon forces. You hate the Blue Moon Army. You wage war. There isn't anything more to it than that. Unlike sequels, the COs in the original Famicom Wars lack personality, dialogue, or rhyme or reason for what they're doing. All you need to know is that this is war, and you're in it to win. Despite the fact that the names of the army sound like a certain magically delicious cereal, the game is incredibly deep, involved, and fun to play, so the lack of any real story is forgivable. Graphics: as with all games in the Wars series, Famicom Wars takes place on a grid overworld, with each space representing an area of land, such as cities, roads, plains, mountains, forests, or seas. You navigate a variety of units across the battlefield one by one per turn. Battles are spiced up a bit by showing animation as each force attacks and counterattacks. Overall, the graphics are rather simple, but keep in mind this is the Famicom. In my opinion, the simplicity of the graphics effectively helps keep the game from becoming overwhelming, and thus makes it enjoyable. Audio: as with most classic Nintendo games, half of what makes Famicom Wars so great is its memorable music. Even though the Red Star and Blue Moon themes are basically the only songs in the game, they are pleasant to listen to and will have you humming their themes long after you stop playing. Sound effects in the game are handled well. Bullets sound like they should, explosions sound decent enough, and the siren that whines when each player's turn starts just adds to the feel of war the game presents. Gameplay: this is where Famicom Wars truly excels. As I've said many times, Famicom Wars is a turn-based strategy game where you build units in bases, airports, and seaports. Each unit in the game has a particular purpose and weakness, so creating balanced units is important. For example, ground soldiers can capture neutral and enemy cities and bases, but are helpless against tank fire. Tanks can be easily destroyed by aerial bombers, but bombers are no match for anti-air tanks and indirect missiles. Artillery cannons cannot attack enemies near them, but can devastate enemies from far away without the risk of an immediate counterattack. You must also take in consideration your war funds. It costs significantly more to manufacture large tanks than it does small tanks, so leaving units alone unprotected isn't a good idea, as even the most powerful tanks can be taken out by a large number of weaker forces. Using the various terrain to your advantage during firefights is vital to victory. Units in cities, forests, and mountains benefit from cover that isn't present in open fields, roads, and seas. Units attacking or being attacked from one of these covered areas will receive fewer casualties. If you've ever played Advance Wars, this will all sound immediately familiar. However, there are many slight differences present in the original that don't occur in later Wars games. Units present in Advance Wars are often split into two separate units in Famicom Wars, or vice versa. In Advance Wars, the APC can transport a soldier or refuel other units, but in Famicom Wars, these are two separate units, the supply truck and the transports. Likewise, in Advance Wars, there are two kinds of choppers, attack and transport, but in Famicom Wars, these are one and the same. Another difference is that you can build units at your HQ and sometimes even neighboring cities. The differences in this game go on and on, so suffice it to say that the game plays a little differently from modern day Advance Wars. Though it doesn't suffer from the fact, it's important to note that Famicom Wars does not feature the CO power-up system found in later games. Famicom Wars also supports a two-player mode where the second player assumes the role of the Blue Moon Army. However, due to the length of time battles can take, it's highly unlikely that either player would bother duking it out anywhere but Bean Island, the smallest map in the game.